Welcome back to the iJupiter podcast. I'm your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on Miss Lynn, I think it's Monet, which I'm sure, is it Monet? Yes, she's bobbing her head in the green room. Okay, I'm glad I got that right. You don't pronounce the T. She has a little accent on the E there as well, so that's good. She is in, and Lynn is so kind, so graceful to grace us with her presence today. She is an international author as well as a paranormalist. I don't know quite what that is, but I'm sure she's going to let us know. Also, you all need to know, if you keep coming back and find yourself coming back to the iJupiter podcast, please do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps me out a great deal. That way I can keep putting out shows and keep getting interviews and interviewing interesting people who've had experiences with, all our topics, as you've seen in the intro: consciousness, psychedelics, cryptids, the paranormal, UFO phenomenon, all these things that you will not find on regular television, as well as maybe some other podcasts that you probably listen to. You can also find me on Rumble and Spotify as well. Every week on Wednesday, I do have a live podcast in which I bring on maybe Lynn one day. We have guests from the past who come on, and we talk, about the things of the day, other experiences they've had, and we just kind of go around the table. We have an interesting live chat where people get to ask questions. You can also get yourself some merchandise in the bottom in the description. You can find yourself, some T-shirts. There's a cup on there. There's a couple posters. There's a hat. You can also, if you'd like to, you can also donate some money to me so I can update my equipment. Still working on that. It's on the PayPal down there, and much more. You can also become a member and get some extra podcasts, and you can get yourself a personalized background that I will create for you that you can put on your computer. So with all that being said, everything out of the way, all the housekeeping done, please let's have a warm welcome to the podcast, Mrs. Lynn Monet.
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here. I was really looking forward to this.
I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm, you had mentioned too about the subscribe. Yeah, people definitely don't. And also definitely hit the notification bell for those algorithms. We want to get those algorithms going too.
Yeah. The like button, that's a big one. So where are you coming? Where are you coming at us from today, Lynn?
I'm coming from South Carolina in the USA.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, greeting from the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico.
Oh, yes. I've been there many times.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
When I was 18, my parents took me to Mexico City for my high school graduation gift, and I ended up meeting a federal security officer that worked for the government, and almost got married. So traveled back and forth for a while. That was interesting, but I'm glad I didn't, because since then he's been put in jail, so we won't go there.
That's a story for a different podcast, Lynn.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
So please do me a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
My name is Lynn Monet, as he said, and I do have a website, www.lynnmonnet.com. I have books that are there. I also have them on Amazon and different places that you can find them. But if you buy them from my website, some of those books are not on Amazon. They're on my website only, and they're cheaper. And I can sign them for you also. So
that's cool.
Yes, exactly. And then they do come from me, but I can be reached through there. I've just a little bit about me. I've been a nurse for 40 years. I'm now retired. I'm going to be 62 years old in May, and I also have a degree in biological science, and I just got certified in my Death Doula, which is like a end-of-life midwife, like a midwife that brings in babies. I help take people out.
Oh, wow.
I've always
That's commendable. That's awesome. Let's get into that.
Okay, because I've seen a lot of beautiful things with that. And I've always had the gift of second sight ever since I was a little girl. When I grew up, my family lived a few short blocks behind a hospital that was connected with what they called nursing homes back then. Now they're skilled facilities. La-di-da name. And so it was commonplace for my siblings and I to see ghosts in patient gowns, and also Indians, because there were Indian mounds on the other side of the hospital, just walking through the house. So it's like, oh, well, there's a toaster, there's the door, there's a dead person. So we never became afraid of seeing those things as kids. My parents didn't exactly support it, but they didn't negate it either. And of course, growing up in the 60s, I was born in 1963. And those are just things that you didn't talk about. You didn't want those sorts of things to get out into the neighborhood. But there was one day in particular that my brother and I were in my parents' master bedroom. And of course, I was in my mom's jewelry box, making myself glamorous. And my brother was on the floor playing with his cars. And I turned to show my brother how glamorous I had made myself. And he's turned fixated on the corner of the wall. So I turned to look to see what he's looking at. And there's this misting, which since then I've learned is called ectoplasm. And it's a portal that spirits, ghosts travel through, and lots of other things too. And all of a sudden, in that misting stepped my brother's best friend, John, his mother, father, and brother, and they're just standing there in the mist smiling at us. So my brother gets up and he runs out the door to find my mom, and I run out the same door in the opposite direction looking for my mom. And of course, my brother finds her first, and he says to her, he says, Mom, John and his family's here. My mom's like, well, I didn't even hear anybody knock. And he says, and they're in your bedroom. And she's like, they're in my bedroom. Who let them in my bedroom? So
Wow.
When my mother got to the room with my brother, of course, there was nothing there. And so he got in trouble. And of course, I kept my mouth shut because I saw him too, but I wasn't going to get in trouble. But anyway, the very next day in the United States, the school sessions go, we have a time that's called spring break where the kids get a week off from school during the spring months. And it was the very first Monday after spring break had completed. And my brother's on the bus. He's going to school, and John's usually sits with him on the bus, and he wasn't there. He gets to school, and again, he sits next to him at the same bed, 2 desks pushed together with chairs, and John wasn't there. And the teacher got up and announced in front of the classroom that John would no longer be returning to school because he and his entire family perished in an auto accident the day before. And it happened that day that we saw him in my parents' bedroom.
Oh my God, dude, that is incredible. And so you were having experiences before this particular experience.
Yes, of seeing dead people and patient gowns walking through, my house on a regular basis. And I was 5 years old when that happened. My brother was 7. And we saw it at the same time. And like I said, back in the 60s, that's not something that you brought up because they would literally send the men in white coats and they'd take you away.
Yes, especially in the conservative South, of course.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, as time goes on, I was raised Presbyterian. And when I got to be 10 years old, my mom took a jaunt with the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a book in itself, but we won't go there. And they placed me in front of the elders of the church. I'm at 10 years old, and there's this ring of like 8 men sitting around me telling me that I'm possessed, that what my gifts, that I'm seeing demons, but I'm not going to make it into Armageddon and all of this, stuff like that, which really scared me so bad that I became frightened of my gifts. So when I would see a ghost after that, I still saw things. I would run out of the room just as fast as anybody else. Oh, it's a demon, get out of the house, get away.
That must have been very difficult for you because being in a young, impressionable age and then having these elders above you supposedly know more than you do, telling you that you're a bad person, must really mess with your psyche.
Well, it did. I mean, it created a post-traumatic stress hormone. It was that bad. However, as a single mother, I ended up I have 3 children. I had my last baby at 46, so I've still got a 15-year-old at home, but I have 2 older children that are actually the 2 children that are in my first book. And I purchased a house that was so haunted that I never moved in. It was that bad.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually this is an event that occurred. Let me move it over. That occurred while my son was sitting on the master bathroom toilet. He saw this coming in at him. And that's the cover of the first book. Omnipresent is going to end up being a series of 5 books in the series. Omnipresent, What Happened Next is out. This is actually a picture of the house on the front. And if you look in the window, you can see a face.
Oh my God.
That's a demon. A lot of times people, when they call me for help, the first thing out of their mouth is, it's a demon. And 99.9% of the time it's not. But in that house, there were 2 demons and a young man that had hung himself in the house. And this was verified. The hanging was verified by the gentleman that lived immediately next door, excuse me, who had been the first person on the street.
So can I ask you a question about the house? No, you're rocking and rolling, Lynn. No worries. So when you bought this house, I'm sure you went in and did like either an open house or walked around, and were your gifts being suppressed because of what happened in the Jehovah's Witness church? Or like you were just off that day, or maybe the presence in the house didn't make itself known before you bought it?
Actually, that day, what had happened was I had been looking for over a year, and on a single mother's income, I couldn't afford a lot. So most of the houses that I would come across, either they were like next to a stinky dump or paper mill, or they needed a lot of renovations done to them because they were older. And when this house came on the market, before it was even placed on the MLS, my realtor calls me and she said, "There's a house. My colleague just came back from taking pictures of it. It's not on the MLS. It is in your price range, and it is almost too good to be true." Well, that should have resonated right there, because it was
too good to be true.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it's a nice house. It's a nice house, doubled entry doors, beautiful house. So I ended up meeting with her an hour later, and we drove to the house, and there was an issue throughout the whole time that I owned it with the locks, which was being manipulated by this hellhound that was in the house, which is a form of demon. And so we get there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm checking out the neighborhood to see why the house is priced so cheap. I'm thinking, what is there, a sinkhole, in the neighbor's house, or is there
bad water, bad sewage or something?
Yeah, a junkyard at the end of the street. I mean, what is it? And it was none of those things. It was this beautiful 2-story split level house on a dead end street. I call it a trick or treat neighborhood. So the houses were close enough to get together so the kids could trick or treat and get lots of candy. But yet the backyard was up against literally a 3-acre mowed area. So it just went on and on, the backyard. And I, being a single mother, I was so proud to be able to provide something for that, like that for my children. I never imagined that I could do that. So I asked her, we had problems with the lock. We thought maybe that the realtor had left the wrong keys, the previous one that had been there taking pictures. And every time we said, well, let's just try one more time, then the key would turn. Then the door would open. So while the realtor's trying to get the keys out of the lock, she's having trouble getting them out of the lock. We now have the door opened. When I walked into the house, with a split level, you walk in onto a foyer, and there's stairs that go below and stairs that go up. And I decided to go up, and in my peripheral vision, as I'm walking up the stairs, I catch a vision of this young man hanging in the stairwell.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, so I looked directly at it, and there was nothing there. But the way that I see things is, I can see things very clearly out of my peripheral vision. I can tell you what color their eyes are if they're close enough, their hair color, everything about them. I can see them as plain as I can see you.
Okay.
When they're directly in front of me at a distance, they look more like if you're like at a shopping mall and it's daylight and you're walking from your car to go inside to a store with those big plate glass windows. Yes. And you see your reflection in it and it looks kind of opaque.
Yes.
Yeah, I see them like that. And when they're close up to me, sometimes I'll see a lower half, but usually I see a waffling to the air, kind of like gas fumes or hot vapors coming off of a road. An energetic thing is what I see. So, and that's how I see them. And if anybody wants to go from a scientific method instead of a spiritual one, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes, it shifts, it changes.
Right.
So, when people pass, they still have an energetic, some energy about them. So anyway, I ended up asking to take my kids back that afternoon to see the house. And I was going to make an offer, but I wanted them to come and see it too. And of course, they're tickled to death. They're like, oh, they're bringing some of their favorite things along to carry around the house.
Right.
And
this is my bedroom and that's your bedroom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then they came. I was with the realtor, and we noticed that there had been now a lot of business cards on the counter of people that had been there to see the house because it had then been listed on the MLS. My kids asked, they said, can we go downstairs and look around? I'm like, sure, of course. My daughter and son were back up within 5 minutes, deer in headlight looking eyes. And my daughter says to me, she said, Mommy, I don't want to move here. Well, I'm embarrassed because here's this poor realtor that's been dragging me around for over a year, trying to find a house. And now here's this house that's just too good to be true. I mean, we could fit the house that we were living in inside of there 4 times over if you would stack it on top. And so I said to her, I said, I couldn't believe that she said it. So I said, what did you say? And she said, there's something about this house that I don't like, and I do not want to live here. So I got angry.
How old was she at the time?
She was 13.
Okay.
Yeah, she was 13 going on 14.
That's interesting. That's an interesting time too. If you know anything about poltergeists, that's a very interesting time.
Absolutely. So I said, I got a little perturbed with her, and I said, well, that's not really a decision for you to make. And I'm standing there with this realtor, and I went ahead and I made the offer. I just assumed that my daughter, being a teenager, realized in that moment that she was going to be living 25 minutes away from her friends and going to a different school. And, she was just having an issue with that. I should have listened. So I ended up making a bid on the house, and they approved it. I mean, I even asked for stupid things like light bulbs to be changed. So it would have given them any opportunity to exit out if for some reason they didn't, the house, but they approved everything. Yeah.
Okay. That is so telling when you look, hindsight is 20/20 a lot,
I know, right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. They even changed the light bulb in the attic. I mean, they were like so
in the attic. My God.
To offload that house. So, and again, I just, what I had been told is that this family had relocated to another area for their work, and that they were living in a new house, and that they were paying the 2 mortgages, and that they wanted to offload the house because it was too much of an expense for them. When we went to the closing, I couldn't get the wife to look me in the eye. She kept looking at her feet on the ground whenever I would talk to her, and I'd kind of like move my head trying to get in her view. And she would, I said to her, I said, oh, well, it had like an off-white carpeting in there. So I was going to take all that out and put in wooden floorings. And I told her that. And she says, well, that's what we wanted to do too. But it was just odd that she wouldn't make eye contact with me. So I thanked them for, I was thrilled to get this house. But things amped up right away. I mean, the very first day that I went over there with my kids, I was cooking dinner in the kitchen. They had both come to prop one a PlayStation, the other one his baseball bat and glove in his room. And I'm in the kitchen, and I hear my daughter say to my son, I thought she was talking to him. I'll be there in a minute. But then my daughter comes into the kitchen doorway, and she said, what did you want? I said, I didn't call you. She said, yes, you did. She said, you called me. I said I was coming, and then you called me again. So what did you want? And I said, no, I swear in my life I didn't call you. And then we went back and forth, and my son comes in, and now he's peeking in underneath her arm into the kitchen, and he says, Mommy, I heard you calling too.
Oh, wow.
So here right off the bat, these things had an intelligence about them where they were not only, they had identified me as the mommy lady. They knew Brittany's name and Austin's name, and they were mimicking my voice. So right off the bat, they were playing games. But again, I rationalized it. Part of going through what I went through with the Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm like, oh, this can't be real. The house could get a blessing or something if there is a problem with it. I just kept rationalizing things and doubting myself, for that matter. And so as things progressed, we ended up never moving in. We spent 2 nights there, and I'm kind of moving forward because of the other couple of books, and you'd wanted to talk about the colors of heaven with some of the beauty of
you said a phrase or a word. Now I might have issues with the internet, so if I blank out, just stay on there, and I'll come back, I'll write you on Messenger.
Gotcha.
Because my internet sometimes is very shoddy, and sometimes it's amazing. So welcome to Mexico.
Oh, no, I'm with you.
You mentioned a particular entity that I don't know much about. Could you maybe go in a little bit about hellhounds? What is a hellhound?
A hellhound is also known as a devil dog. It is as there is a hierarchy of angels from cherubim on up to archangels, there's also a sub hierarchy of demon, starting with like these little gargoyle looking things, and they go, the lower they go, the stronger they get. So
Okay.
in a hellhound is able to leave bite marks, bleeding claw marks, bruises. It can move and throw things. It can do a lot of physical things. And whereas the second demon in the house was one that was closer to the surface, and he was more of like the cheerleader for the creepiest one. But yeah, that's what that is. They're very rare to find, and what it is wherever they're placed, they are there to guard and protect ferociously. So what I was told by one of the ladies, the last people to come to the house to try to clear the house, of which I had multiple denominations of religion come and nothing happened. She told me that if my house had been built over 3 feet, that it wouldn't have been haunted. And the thing about houses is that it's not about the age of the house. A brand new house can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on and what was there. And you just don't know what was there 800 years ago. I mean, it could have been some burial ground or something. But that is what she said, that if it had been built over 3 feet, it would not have been haunted because of the way that these things were, angling in. And then there's a lot to that of how they were tunneling through tunnels, and even the house, she pointed at a couple of other houses in the neighborhood, and she said, I bet that one's haunted, and I bet the one behind it is haunted. And she was right, because in the 8 months that I owned the house, didn't move in it, the 8 months that I owned the house, the rental that was catty corner across the street that she had pointed out as haunted literally changed families in 8 months 3 times.
Okay.
So I'm certain it was. I'm certain that it was. But I learned a lot with that house, and I was able to connect with people of like mind, like me, that were empaths, that could see things, that had abilities, and it didn't make me feel so weird. So being able to connect with those people helped me to now acknowledge my gifts and help them flourish even more. So anyway, there were the 2 demons. The young man was verified by the gentleman next door that he had hung himself in the house. They were the original builders of the house, and the house was built in the 1970s. So the house was not that old. And they said that the parents were going through a divorce, and the son had a little bit of a drug problem. The mom came home and found him hanging in the stairwell. But this house had literally changed hands so many times and sat bank opened empty so many times because people would just walk off on it. And of course, I came from out of state. I came up from Florida to this house in North Carolina. And so I didn't know the area. I didn't know that the entire area was haunted. I found that out after the fact. But anyway,
how were you able to, I don't know, not to get, you don't have to get into too much detail. Were you able to like resell the house? Were you able to give it to somebody who was like a paranormal investigator who was very interested in those kind of things? How did you get this, this away from this mistake that you made?
After having multiple groups come up and try to clear the house, we did release the young man, but those 2 demons were still there. I told my mother, who was helping me get the house ready to sell it. Well, anyway, just to back up, some things occurred in the house, even after I had a priest there, that I said, no, as a mother, I can't move in here with children and have my children come to me in the middle of the night saying there's something in my closet or under my bed, or even worse, in their bed. And there's nothing I can do, while they're running in to crawl in bed with me and the covers are being pulled off. So I couldn't bring myself as a mother to move into that house. So I did put it up for sale by owner. My mother and I went over one day because there was a couple with 3 children that wanted to come and see the house. When my mom and I got to the house, we were walking up the walkway to those beautiful double entry doors. And my mom looks up to the windows upstairs and she said, Lynn, did you get tint on those windows? And I'm like, well, no, why? And I looked up and the vertical blinds were opened, but you couldn't even see them. It was like just black. And then I looked down to the lower level windows and there were flies all over those windows. So when I looked back up to the upstairs windows, it was like 3D moving. The flies were so thick, you couldn't see through the glass. And here these people,
like Amityville Horror or something.
Yes, absolutely. And here these people were coming, like an hour later. So my mom and I, we expected to go into the house and be swarmed by the flies. And fortunately, they were just plastered all over the windows trying to get out too. But they had been in there long enough that they had left excrement all around the molding around the windows. Right. And the thing is there was nothing in the house to draw them. There was no food, no cleaning products, the toilet was flushed. I mean, there was nothing in there. And they were not eggs. These were full grown flies in the house. And my mother and I, on some of them, they were stuck between the screens and the panes that were painted shut on the outside. We had to take the screens off to let them in the house in order to usher them out a window in front that we had the screens off of that would let them exit outside. The thing is that the couple that was supposed to come while my mother and I were going through the house trying to get these flies out, apparently called and left a message on my phone, that they needed to reschedule. I originally had made the mistake of making the appointment while in the house. So when we rescheduled the second appointment, I was in my car. So we made the appointment for the next day. And my mother and I, this time, we went over there like 3 hours early to make sure that that we weren't walking into this fly mess again. And we got there and everything was fine. There were no bugs. Everything smelled good. Everything, looked nice in the house. And so we waited for the people to come and they finally arrived. And the lady was telling me that she grew up in that neighborhood and in a similar house, that she wanted one like that to raise her children in. And her kids, of course, were running around the house, picking out their bedrooms, just like mine had been, so it was kind of deja vu with that. And all of a sudden they come up and they ask if they can go downstairs. The upstairs had 3 bedrooms and one of the bedrooms was kind of small and nobody wanted the small bedroom. So everybody wanted a bigger bedroom. So I said, the mom says to go, is it okay? I said, sure, go ahead. And again, 5 minutes, those kids were back upstairs. And all of a sudden I hear the little girl say to the little brother, because one of the children was not with them, Tommy and it was your name too. Tommy can Tommy can have the creepy room downstairs.
Yay, Tommy gets the creepy room.
Yeah. And she would take the little one upstairs. And I realized in that moment as a mother, I couldn't bring myself to sell it to anybody with children because the children could see them.
Right.
And this also goes into where after I sold the house that I did contact the family and find out what was going on with them. But it just so happened that a retired couple from Florida came up. There was a cash buy for the house. They wanted it for their retirement home. And we were signing papers in the house. And as we're leaving, I exit the double entry doors first. And all of a sudden I hear the wife say to the husband, "Why did you push me?" And he said, "I didn't push you." And she said, "Yes, you pushed me." And he said, "I'm 3 steps back. I can't even touch you. I didn't push you." And she says, "Well, I don't know what happened then." And I did know. So my conscience got the best of me and I couldn't do to them what had been done to me because the people that sold the house to me knew it was haunted. So I said to them, I'm not sure what your religious beliefs are, but do you believe in ghosts? And they said, "No. We don't discuss those sorts of things. We don't entertain those sorts of things, and we're protected. So no, we do not believe in ghosts." They did not want to hear it. If they had wanted to hear it, I would have told them the truth. If I could have afforded it as a single mother, I would have burnt it to the ground.
Fair enough.
But I couldn't. And here I am. I'm not living there. So I'm living somewhere else, having to pay the mortgage on that house and the electric and all of the stuff. And going back and forth, and I couldn't keep workers in there either.
Fair enough.
But So what happened after that was that I ended up writing a second book, Omnipresent, what happened next, because everybody wanted to know what happened next. And I had actually driven past the property about 6 months later by accident. I was on the interstate. There was an accident, and I had to take a shortcut through that just so happened to lead me near the street that passed the cross street where that house was. And I noticed when I went there that there was a sign in the front yard, and I'm like, I wonder if that's a for sale sign. So the curiosity got the best of me, and I went to the next street and I turned around and I said a prayer. I said, please, I want to be. I was going in quiet with no radio. I didn't want to be. I was very inconspicuous. I didn't want them to come out and then maybe invite me inside, because there was no way in hell I was going back in that house. So I turn onto the street, as quiet as can be. I'm creeping onto the street, and I go to the end that's a dead end, and I turn around and I'm coming back. And as I get in front of the house, my radio turns itself on full blast, blaring, and I couldn't get it to turn off. I couldn't get it to change channel. I literally left skid marks getting off that street. I kid you not. And as soon as because it was the second house on the left. So once I got to the stop sign and got off of the street, the radio shut itself off. I kid you not. So to me, that was a calling card, them letting me know that they knew I was there and that they were also still there. So I went ahead and I did contact the people that sold me the house. And they had a daughter and a son. The son was 6, the little girl was 4. You know how kids, when they go to school, the teacher will say, draw a picture of your family in your house. And they always draw the stick people in the house with the flower that's 3 times bigger than the house,
Yes.
those little pictures. And so they drew this, but on the other side of the house were these black stick figure things with creepy teeth. And when the teachers and the parents would ask what those were, they would say, those are the monsters that live downstairs in my house. So these kids, so these kids were seeing them, and the parents almost got a divorce because of the ghost coming and knocking on the doors when the husband was he worked midnights, he was trying to sleep, in the house, thinking that it was the wife. The wife had something crawling in bed with her, thinking it was the husband, and nothing was there. I mean, all of these things were happening, and the kids were showing up with bite marks and bruise marks that were not explainable. So they ended up moving. And the lady, when I did get a hold of her, she apologized. She said they were actually 3 hours late to the closing on the house. And she said that the reason why they were late was because she and her husband were arguing when she found out that I had children. She didn't want to sell me the house. So anyway,
so they had to go through some things too. So there's a lot of like understanding, but it's also extremely, finances can be hard, especially when you're trying to raise a family. Yes. And the people that you ended up selling it to, they're retired couple, single, not single, but maybe their kids have been, grown up. So, and they were like, oh, we don't even talk about it. We don't discuss about it. You're like, okay, fair enough, and you have to kind of leave it at that. The papers are already signed. I completely understand it. So, Lynn, let's get into what, you said you're a retired nurse. Mm-hmm. Now you help people cross over, maybe that's the proper term. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Could you maybe get into that a little bit and kind of unpack that a bit for me?
Absolutely. I've been a nurse for 40 years, 18 of which has been in end-of-life care. I'm a certified death doula, which people are like, well, what is a death doula? A death doula is a death midwife. As midwives bring in babies, death midwives help people to exit and support the family. And it's more than just hospice. It's more of a spiritual thing, because I can see the spirits coming in to receive the person every time except once. And I don't know what came to get him. I wasn't there when he passed. But anyway, he was fighting death for like 10 days. But so I've been able to do that with my gift of second sight. And also working in end-of-life care, the one thing that I've noticed is when people get closer to their time of death, they start talking about seeing their loved ones. And the medical field immediately runs claiming it's hallucinations, and they get the medication to medicate them with it because, They don't want to hear about the hallucinations. And a lot of times too, the family's more comfortable with having them get the medication because they're creeped out about them talking about a dead person in the room too, even if it's somebody that they know.
Well,
You know,
that is such a. I'm sorry, Lynn, but that seems to be such an interesting thing. Like when children are hyperactive and all these terminologies that got thrown on them in the 80s, you know, when I was a kid, you know, they always want to just medicate away that part of us, our consciousness, our collective consciousness, our connection to the past, to our ancestors, to the future, to the things around us. Everyone, for some reason, is extremely uncomfortable with that. And I imagine doing what you do. I'm sure people probably reach out to you because of what you do and say, we need this. So like, do people like contact you, or do you have like a process? How does that go?
They contact me through a registry, and a lot of people, you know, they know that I do this. So they contact me, and there are a lot of stores and things like that, like spiritual stores that have my business cards and things in there also with that. But, you know, I feel so honored and blessed being able to do this part of end of life because of the rewards that I receive for it. I mean, getting to hear the messages that come back when somebody's been in that rallying stage, and they come back talking about children that haven't been born yet, or different things that they've seen, and also feeling
children that haven't been born yet.
Yes,
that's incredible.
Yes, well, I have some stories. I'll be happy to share them with you if you'd like.
I would love to hear your theory on that idea, since you are, you know, this is your deal, this is what you do, this is what you've been trained to do, and you have your license in it, or however the wording is for that. What is that? Like, if they could see the future, and I'm sure the relatives are talking about are people who have been since passed before this, I'd imagine. You know, if I'm wrong, please correct me. What do you think that is? What is the mechanism?
Well, for one thing, when they start to transition, the filters start to efface, and they're able to start to hear the telepathy of the spirit's way of communicating, as well as they can hear the speech of the embodied people that are still embodied in the room. And that's kind of where that is. And the loved ones do come in. I had a lady, for example, her niece was named April, and I'm in the room tending her aunt, and the aunt says to her daughter, her niece April, she says, "When are you going to have those 2 baby girls? I want to see those 2 baby girls before I go home to Jesus." And April turns and she says, "Well, I don't know why, you know, I've been trying for 25 years and I haven't been able to have children, and I'm in menopause. I don't know why you're seeing that. That's impossible. You know, that's not, I'm not pregnant. That's not happening." And Anne insisted. She said, "No, these are your little girls. You're holding one in each arm. They look like you. They both have blonde," she said, "ringlets and chocolate brown eyes and dimples, and they look like you." So then she passed away. During that time that I worked in this unit, April's father then came through. He had a hip replacement, so he had respite care there for a little while. And then another relative came through that also passed away there. Her father didn't pass away there, but this other relative did. So I got to see her on a couple of other occasions over a period of a couple of years. I saw her at the 6-month point after her aunt had passed away, which was when her dad was in there with the hip replacement, and she had a baby bump. And of course, I'm like, I have to know. So I walked over and I'm like, "What have you got there?" And she says, "I am pregnant with identical twin girls." Yes, I kid you not.
You're gonna get tears thrown down my face. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, she said at the time that her aunt was telling her about these, that she was pregnant, but she was so early pregnant that she didn't know.
Right.
Yep. And lo and behold, over a period of a couple of years, I got to see the little girls as babies, and then I got to see them toddling. And the cute part about them is they looked just like the mom, but from behind they were walking with that little waddle, and they had these little blonde bobbity curls that were bouncing as they were going down with their little dolly in their arms and holding mommy's hand going down the hallway. And they had brown eyes and dimples, and they looked just like the mom. Just like the, you know, April that had them. But there are many, I've heard this many times, people that these kind of things come through. I also had for instance, and as I mentioned before, the medical field, if anybody's hallucinating, whether it's mental illness or somebody getting ready to pass that's considered dementia, mental illness, they got to run and get the pill. But it's all about stockholders and keeping all of us manipulated. But anyway,
you're on the right podcast. You are on the right podcast. Please, that's fine with me. Fantastic.
Oh, let me tell you, we could do a whole podcast just on pharma. So anyway, I had a lady on my unit that was blind. She'd been blind for 10 years, could not see shadows, couldn't see any glimmer of light at all. And her son and daughter come down to the nurse's station and they say, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. And I'm like, I kind of expected it because she was in that transitioning stage where she was kind of in and out. And so they seemed bothered by it. And I knew she was okay. But I told them, I said, well, let me walk with you down to your mama's room and just check on her, see if she needs me to reposition her or get her some water or something, something to make her more comfortable. Right. And really, I was walking down there for them to be more comfortable. When we walked into the room, Edna's laying there at a slant with her oxygen on, and she's reaching up into the sky with a big smile on her face, as if she's being handed something very delicate, like a snowflake. I mean, she was being that careful with it, type thing. And she was very happy with what she was receiving. And I said to her, Edna, who's here? And she said, George. And the daughter turned as white as a sheet and had to sit down because she said, well, George is my father. And my father's been deceased for however many years it was. And then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was Edna's poodle. When George died, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle because Edna, being blind, couldn't care for the dog anymore.
Okay.
So, and Pixie was a very old dog, but still very much alive at that time. So the son told me the story and he said to me, do you think that my mom's hallucinating? And I, as a professional in a professional setting, I can't come out and say, no, I think your dad's here, type thing.
Right.
Because most of the time they don't want to hear that, gives them the willies. So I said to him, I said, well, do you think that she's hallucinating? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, I'm not trying to change your religious beliefs, but do you mind if I try something? I said, I believe that the loved ones do come in to help their loved ones cross over at that time. There's also some other things I've seen on the other side that are not human, but they're not bad things either. Okay. So the alien theory and the angel theory come together on the other side. Okay. So everybody's right. But anyway, so I said to Edna, Edna, can I ask George a question? She nodded her head yes. And I said, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. Now, he was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. And the only way, with Edna being totally blind, could have known that is if George had told her.
Right.
So many times people miss this time that they can communicate with the other side themselves when somebody is actively transitioning. Because they can hear the telepathy from the other side, as well as the human communication. You can ask a question and the answer can come through the telepathy where the person transitioning can respond. Ask Uncle Bob where he put the clock. You know what I'm saying? Or you can ask that kind of thing. However, the spirit needs to be present in the room at the time that you have the question for. And if they're not, they can be sent for. And a lot of times they will come. But I've had so many, for instances, even people with Alzheimer's that have seen the angels come in. I have a cute story if we have time for me to share this one.
Absolutely.
Okay. There was a lady, I call her Abigail in my book. This lady had the biggest personality. She was just, I loved her. She was one of my favorite. You're not supposed to have favorites, but she was kind of like my favorite. She and her husband came to the facility because his health was declining. Now, the thing that was ironic about this couple is both of them were only children and they never had children. So they didn't have like any nieces or nephews or anybody to check in on them. Once their family was gone, their family was gone. So they just had each other. So I call her Abigail in my book. Abigail slipped and fell and fractured her hip. And she ended up on my unit. And there was one day that I came in, and she said to me, and she'd been there a while, so we built up a rapport. And she said to me, she said, Lynn, do you think I'm crazy? And of course, I'm teasing her a little bit because we have that comfort level. And I'm like, define crazy. And she's like, no. Yeah. You know, she's like, no. She's like, crazy. I'm like, well, no, why would you even say something like that? Of course not. And she said, well, I see my parents. She said, I know my parents have been gone for a long time. She says, but I see my parents and it makes me happy. And now they're going to start me on this medication for hallucinations. And I don't want to stop seeing my parents. I kid you not. So I said to her, I said, well, first of all, I heard in report that you're going to be going home in the morning. And secondly, as your advocate, you can refuse. If you're of sound mind, you can refuse to take medication that you don't want to take. And she was happy with that. She ended up going home.
Awesome.
Several months later, she ended back up on my unit. This time she had gotten cancer, and it was very quickly, she was getting ready to transition.
Yeah, it was terminal. Yes.
Exactly. So she came back on my unit, and this time she was talking about seeing a young woman with a little girl. And she would sneak cakes and cookies from the dining room back to her room to help to be the hostess to give to the little girl and the woman. And this was creating a bug problem in her room. So we had to stop her from doing that. And so she was seeing them. And there was one day in particular, I was working midnights as a single mom so I could be home with my kids during the daytime. And a friend of mine needed to have a day shift off. And I told her that I would cover for her. So this particular day, all of the residents are back in their room after their lunchtime, and I'm going down the hallway with my treatment cart to start my treatments. And I pass Abigail's room on my left-hand side, and I noticed that Abigail's sitting in her recliner. She's got this big picture window with one of those large air conditioners underneath, kind of like they have in the American hotels. And she's leaning forward with a piece of yellow butterscotch wrapped candy. And I'm looking, and if anybody else had passed by, it would have looked like she was trying to feed the candy to the air conditioner. But I could see clearly standing in front of her, there was a woman with black hair parted down the middle, very long. She had on a white peasant blouse and a denim longer skirt, with a little girl standing in front of her, also with black hair, parted down the middle, bangs. She had on this little blue dress with a pinafore, lacy socks, little Mary Jane shoes, very, very cute. And I passed, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, isn't that nice? Abigail's got some visitors today, because she didn't have family other than her husband to come in and check on her. And then it hit me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't remember those people signing in at the nurse's station. And legally, we have to have a head count. So that if there's an emergency, then they know how many.
Right. That when they go out to the meeting point of the quote unquote fire, then you can take roll call. Is there somebody still inside? Got you. Yes,
exactly. So I backed up and I knocked on her door frame, and she invited me in. And when I walked in, there was nobody there, but I could see the waffling right here.
Right. The shimmering. Yes.
Yep. Whoop. Sorry. No and worries. So I said to her, I walk in, and she said to me, she said, I want you to meet my friends. Isn't the little girl beautiful? And I said, yes, she is. And I'm telling you, Abigail almost came out of her chair, and she leans forward. She says, can you see them? I said, yes. And she said to me, she said, don't tell anybody. They'll think you're crazy and put you on medication. So here this woman had the wherewithal, even though now she was heavily medicated for hallucinations, she was still seeing ghosts and loved ones coming in. So they aren't hallucinations, and that she was able to see them, and she had the wherewithal to know the difference.
Right, and the wherewithal to even tell you this is what they're going to do to you if you are reporting what I'm also seeing. Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many beautiful stories with that. I mean, when my mother passed away, I saw her come out of her body, and if you'd like me to share that with you, I'll be happy to share that with you as well.
We could do, we'll do one more. Absolutely.
Okay. Alrighty. My mom had cancer, and she had finally decided to stop treatment because she just had enough. So she had a year before she actually passed away, and we checked off her bucket list, and she ate lasagna once a week at her favorite Italian restaurant and lived it up. She went out happy. But she was now in the facility, in the hospice facility, and she was real. And the thing, just to back up, the thing about people is a lot of times when they're getting close to their time of death, they know it. And they will mention it, like, I'm going home tomorrow, or so-and-so, if something happens to me, please make sure that my daughter gets my cat. And everybody's like, oh, don't talk about that. And then the next day they're gone. So my mother was going around the facility saying goodbye to people, telling them that she was going home the next day. And it just so happened she did. She passed away at around 1 something the next day. But she even went so far as to tell a lady that was working there, who had to put her dog down 3 days earlier, that my mother said that she would watch over the dog until the lady finally crossed over to come over and see about her dog. So, that's how aware she was of it. So my mom is now in her room. I'm at her bedside.
Gives me hope that I'll see my dog.
You will see your dog. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh.
Wait.
Let me tell you, the beautiful reception that you go through, usually with people first, but then you have an individual one for pets. And let me tell you, if you're expecting the German Shepherd, you might be surprised, because it's not just this lifetime, it's all of your lifetimes. So you might have a T-Rex or a white camel come running up to you for a hug and bounding on you, and in addition to that German Shepherd. So,
but you'll still recognize the whatever, the soul, the force, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's interesting.
You will. Wow. Once the things that keep us separated from the other side lift, when you pass, you will recognize all of them, and they'll recognize you, and they'll be so happy to come and see you. So yes, absolutely. Dogs, people, everybody. Death has such a finality to it, which is why I wrote my book, Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End, which is this one with the rainbow. And I wrote it to help take the stigma of death and dying away, and to kind of explain to people what the process is, so that it's not so scary. And there's people, we don't die. We just simply shed our skin and go. Right. And you will see them again.
You will on the right show.
Yeah,
you right show. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
I love that so much.
Yep. I promise you that you will see your loved ones again. If you can, instead of thinking of the finality of the death and them being gone, think about it that they're on a wonderful vacation, and you're going to catch up with them in a little while. You know what I mean? Because you will.
So the dreams that you get, because like after, someone passes, a lot of time, I had the same thing with my grandmother in 2015. I got these 2 very strong dreams. And so basically those strong dreams are like a postcard.
Yes, they are. They are.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, they're letting you know that they're there. And the thing is too is when people pass away, you can make a pact with them. Which, if we have time at the end, I'll tell you how to do that. Because my mom is still leaving. She and I had a pact that she would leave her long, beautiful pearlescent hairs. And even at Thanksgiving, our holiday, there was one across the seat in the dining room table. And she hasn't ever been here to this house or my car or anything. She's been gone for 9 years. So wow. There's no way that it could have gotten there by itself, but you can make pacts with them. And I'll tell you that in the end. I wanted to tell you about my mom.
Yes.
So my mom is no longer able to verbalize and open her eyes. And the thing about people is sometimes they stay in until the last minute. And sometimes the soul will leave the body even a day in advance and just let the physical body finish.
Oh, wow.
So type thing. So they don't always have to stay in there for the whole thing. My mother chose to stay in for the whole thing. So, and I knew this because when people would come into the room, even though she could no longer open her eyes or verbalize, she would respond by moving her eyebrows up and down and making mouth movements with her mouth, and it was appropriate. People would come in and say, "Hi, Phyllis," and she would back in response.
Hello, right?
Yes, exactly. So as I'm sitting in the room, and I'm kind of moving forward a little bit quicker, I'm sitting and I'm watching the other side of the room fill up with this ectoplasmic misting from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, and I see movement on the other side. Sometimes I see a pant leg stick out or a shoulder. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see mom naked when she comes to meet you to help you transition over. It's like, please, put on some clothes. So they do show up in clothes. I've only seen one naked ghost, but that's another story.
A former streaker. Okay.
Well, actually, he was crawling in women's beds and pulling down their underwear in the middle of the night.
Oh,
like I said, that's a whole nother story. I have a picture of him. I have a picture of him. I'll be happy to share it with you. He's got his Johnson covered, but he is naked. So anyway, back to my mom. So this misting occurs, and in the misting, it started to efface like a arched area, and I saw my grandmother, my mother's mother, come through, and she looked the exact same as I remembered her seeing her last. Now, usually they will come in as you remember seeing them last, unless they were unhealthy. Like if somebody had cancer and lost weight down to like 50 pounds and they were a bag of bones, you're going to remember, they're going to approach you as they looked healthy last for the initial thing so that you know who they are. Okay. So my grandmother comes in. She's got her little 80s curly perm and her leisure suit on that she made herself. And she even presented in her glasses. So that's how they present. And she comes over to my mom's bed and she starts stroking the inside of my mom's arm. And she would lean forward and say something into my mother's ear. Well, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but my mom was doing the mouth and the eyebrow thing in response as my grandmother was pulling away, and this happened 3 different times. I then see this frantic wave behind my mother. It's my beautiful sister, Robin, who was murdered by a jealous boyfriend when she was 20. Her perfume filled the room. It just filled the room, and I could see her beautiful. She came around from the crowd and actually embraced me. I could feel her hair falling over my face and her perfume and her essence. And it was just so nice to connect with her again. And then she went back around. And when she went back around, the whole wall had effaced. It was wide open. I could actually see into the other side. And I mean, there are colors, there are people that you would need 10 color wheels for. My new favorite color is over there. You can't describe it with the colors that we have here. They have light that emits like from within the atmosphere itself. And it's the perfect lighting, so it's not glarish over there. And they had this beautiful reception prepared for my mother. And I noticed that on the tables there was a table with like a flowing cloth underneath this willow looking tree, but there was nothing on it. My mom explains that why later about food. There's a thing about food. So there was nothing on it. And I told my mom, and again, I'm speeding forward. I said to my mom, I said, Mom, Robin and Grandma are here. It's time for you to go. And I kissed her cheek. I said, I'm going to be fine, but please go home with them. And she mouthed and did the eyebrow thing. And she took her last breath in 10 minutes. But while I'm sitting there, while I'm sitting there, I'm noticing, because a lot of times people are waiting to hear that it's okay for them to go. You know what I'm saying?
That happened to me too. That happened to me too. And the day after. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So I noticed these spirits that were huddling up towards the head of my mom's bed, kind of like in a football huddle. And I'm like, what are they doing? And all of a sudden, when they opened up, in the center was my mother standing there. And the feeling of the love and elation that comes from that other side, there are no words to describe it. There's not a feeling that can touch it, but you can't help but smile in it and feel the joy. You just can't help yourself. It's not a tearful moment. It's a joyous moment. And here I am sitting there. I'm seeing my mom standing there. She's being greeted by her loved ones. She's so happy. You know, people are coming up one by one. There are hundreds of people in the room. Some people I recognized from that had passed before my mother, and there were some that I didn't recognize, but that she did when, that she knew. But then I look over and I notice that she's not breathing. Her physical body has stopped breathing. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I better call the nurse, because if the nurse walks in, my mother's just stopped breathing. I'm sitting here smiling, and that's not a normal response. They might think I put...
This is not the place to make me laugh.
So,
that could be a Coen Brothers movie. That is.
I know, right?
That's so funny. I'm so sorry. I'm a comic by trade,
No, it's
but
okay.
just sitting there smiling with a grin and the heart monitor is flatlined. That is
Exactly. They might think I put a pillow over her head or something, you
no,
know.
no.
So,
I'm
so
so sorry to laugh, but it's so funny.
no, it's
Oh,
okay. It
okay,
is
please,
funny.
please,
So
please.
I called the nurse in, and she walks through all of the festivities going on. They didn't seem to be bothered by it, and I asked if I could sit there a little bit longer to watch. And I mean, it literally went on for 20 minutes our time. Time on the other side is timeless. On our side, we're linear. We're all about hours and days and years. So 20 minutes of our time, it went on. And these people continued to come up and approach my mom, and the room started to thin out. And I noticed these beautiful beings that walked with the angels. And I mean, there were 10-foot ceilings in the room, and it was capping them like right here. So they were very, very tall. They had white luminous hair. They looked like angels, but without wings, but they looked like they were from somewhere else. They were just gorgeous. I don't know if they were male or female. It didn't matter. They were just gorgeous and exuded this beautiful energy. And they were part of the process of helping. And if you think about it, with as many stars as there are in the sky that are actually sunshines to solar systems, planets probably even similar to ours, when there are beings on those planets that finish out their lifetimes and need to leave their bodies, they have to go somewhere too. And this was my feeling about the beautiful being that was there. I don't think you don't see like the cryptids and stuff over there, they go somewhere else. But these beautiful beings were there that were not from Earth. So, and they walked with the angels, and they walked with my mother as she was leaving to go past with my grandmother and my sister to continue on to a reception. The thing about food is, after my mom had passed away, I was standing in my kitchen, I was preparing something, and I said, Mom, don't you ever miss the taste of potato salad or those barbecued ribs or those chocolate brownies that you used to make? She comes through like a megaphone. She says, we don't eat here. I said, yeah, I know, I know that you don't eat there, but still, don't you miss it? And she's like, we do everything here with thought. She said, we can be 6 places simultaneously. So that means they can be with you in your car going to work while they're with your cousin, at his house, and all of these other places. So they can be 6 places simultaneously. And with thought, all they have to do is think of something like if they want to go to a waterfall, and they're instantaneously there. Or if they want to be in your car, they're instantaneously there just with that thought. And she said, so when it comes to food, if we want to enjoy a flavor, something from Earth or some other planet, for that matter, all that we have to do is think about it, and the flavor and the sensation of eating the food comes to us as if we are eating it.
Wow.
Yeah, I kid you not. But you know what? If you think about it, like it being near an ocean or even popcorn, if you think about it hard enough, you can smell it and almost taste it. You can smell the salt, even though you're not, if you think about popcorn right now, can't you smell popcorn even though there's no popcorn?
Yes, of course.
Exactly. So it's similar to that kind of thing. So when people argue, because when people pass, they keep all 5 of their senses, they actually even gain a couple of them. But people argue, well, how can they smell? They don't have a nose. Well, that's true. They don't have the olfactory nerve in the nose like we have, but they have memory recall. And that's how they smell, is through memory recall. So just to clear that up. But yeah, I've got tons of other stories.
Yeah, would you be interested in maybe coming on a live episode, like where I have you on and people can ask questions? And
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Yeah.
Well, would you stay in the green room for a second, and we'll schedule that up?
Sure.
This has been way more than I expected, Lynn. Me and you are going to be like friends, because I have actually, during the podcast, I'd like to ask you some questions actually about some personal things that I've been through.
Okay.
With the passing of my grandmother, and there's some questions that haven't been answered so far, and that would be a lot of fun. Sure. So thank you so much for coming on. Please do me a favor one more time. Plug your books. Plug your I don't know if you have a channel or whatever else that you're. Just go ahead and do that all again for me one time, please.
Okay. I just recently did a TV show called Beyond Belief with George Norrie. It's now streaming on Gaia. Currently, I have 4 books out. I've got the 2 books in the Omnipresent series. I have a 3rd book coming out, Omnipresent 111 Becca Dawn Drive, which is the story about that naked ghost going from apartment to apartment, crawling in bed with women. It's coming out around Halloween. And then a 4th book in the Omnipresent series. It's Omnipresent Gnome Place Like Home, which is referencing a house that I inherited that was enchanted, not haunted. And there's a whole story behind that that is absolutely magnificent. I also have a book, The Colors of Heaven, which is out, which is the one that we were talking about last.
Right, with the rainbow
which is,
on it.
Right, with the death and dying. I'm going to have a follow-up to that because I was there with my sister when she passed away. And she left like 45 minutes before her body finished. I saw her somersault out backwards and meeting my brother. My whole family's on the other side. Out of 6 of us, I'm the only one left, and I have a half sister. So, but for my immediate family, same parents, everybody's gone but me. So I also have a book called The Gap. It's not really paranormal related, but it is for adolescents and teens. Talks about dating and what to do if a condom breaks and not wearing stinky sneakers on a date, because there's nothing attractive about smelly feet on a date, no matter how handsome or gorgeous you are.
Lynn, are we talking about a left turn? That is the left turn of all left turns.
Yes.
All right, sure, fair enough.
Well, as I said, I had a late life baby, and I've got a 15-year-old at home, and I was looking for a book that went past the birds and the bees and the other stuff, the human trafficking, and filled in that gap in between. And so I had 2 people that were counselors that came forward and said, well, you write books. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, we can't find anything like this. So why don't you write it? So I had them guide me, and I wrote it, and I put it out, and they love it. So it fills in all of the gaps. It even has
What's it called again?
The Gap, what else your adolescent and teen needs to know. It even has pictures in it of trunk releases from the inside. So if you get abducted and put inside of a trunk, then you can find the release button inside of the trunk, how to get out of a backseat into a trunk, and from a trunk into a backseat.
Which is a little bit of maybe advice from me as well. I don't know if it's in your book or not. But the women, you need to learn. I don't know it myself. I have a daughter, and I'm going to go to school with her. You need to go to jiu-jitsu school, and you need to learn the guard position. If you learn the guard position, there's nobody that can hurt you, or at least even in a confined space like a backseat or God knows where else all this stuff happens. Which
absolutely
right. Well, you need to learn the guard position. Yes,
absolutely. And in this book, it talks about too how to poke somebody's eyeballs out if they're crawling on top of you.
There you go.
And never ever to use it unless your life is at risk.
But I would still do it.
Yeah, and it even talks about how to clean a refrigerator from top to bottom and remember to turn it back on when you're done. So it's got a lot of
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, because people sometimes don't, and how to wash dishes by hand, because kids today have a dishwasher, and when the dishwasher's broken, they just kind of look at the dishes and wait for them to wash themselves. So it talks about a lot of stuff. Yeah, I do. But I recommend that parents read it first to make sure that it's appropriate for their child, because it is not candy coated. It is very straightforward. There are no naked pictures and body parts. It's verbally descriptive enough. It is written gender neutral, which was very hard to do because it kept trying to correct me. Gender neutral being that the names could be male or female, because some of these situations could be male or female, type things. So, being put in, with dating or having sex before you're ready to, or, and also it talks about setting good boundaries and what to say, because you can tell them how to set good boundaries, but when they're put in a situation, they need to know what to say. Somebody wants to hit them up for $20 that they hit them up for last month and never paid them back, so they don't want to give them any more money. They can say, well, I can't give you the $20, but I'll be happy. Yeah, but is there any other way that I can help you? Because I'm not able to give you the $20. And usually the person will say, no, I just need the $20, but that allows them to save face. You know what I mean?
Right.
And those ages that are so important. But anyway, that's what that one is about. It is a complete, 180 almost of a turn.
From the other stuff that we were talking about, this is
exactly.
You've been a very pleasant surprise. And that's which is the greatest thing. There's a lot of people who like A-type personalities who sit down and ask questions beforehand and write out a set list and all those kind of things. But I always just like to let my guests go. And you were excellent at what you do.
Oh, thank
very,
you. I
very
hope I didn't
interesting.
talk too. I hope I didn't talk too fast. Sometimes I do.
No,
I was trying to squeeze it all in, and
no, no, but we'll have plenty of time.
Okay.
I guarantee you're going to be on the show again. I guarantee that.
I would love that. Thank you.
We'll have an interesting relationship when it comes to these kind of situations, because I'm learning a lot. And I love hearing the experiences from people who know things that I don't know, and you have that ability. So therefore, I would love to learn it.
Okay.
Or at least
well,
know of it.
That sounds great. Well, and
Okay.
thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. And just wait for me for a second. I'll be back in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. I kind of cut her a little bit there. So that was Lynn Monet. That was a very interesting discussion. We went from this incredible haunted house that she bought, and why she should move in, and all the things that then is in her 2 books, Omnipresent, I think it was called. And she also has, what she also does with helping people transition over. That was just, there's so many questions I have. And the live is most likely going to come out before this episode will, so we'll have to make sure we skip some of that. We'll remember what we talked about. And yeah, so if you keep finding yourself coming back to the podcast and hearing some cool stuff like that, because that's the kind of stuff I'm into as well, then go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and follow me over on, I also have a Facebook page. You guys go over there, you can post your pictures. We have a cool group over there, have an interesting moderators. We have a lot of fun over there, and it's always cool. And, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy what I do. And remember, we are the eye, and we are aware. Love you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.